to another Apollo Papyrus episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest is a multi-genre author, and her first book is a literary fiction work titled Like a Bird. Her name is Laitie Montai, and here's my interview with Laitie. Laitie Montai, welcome to Apollo Papyrus.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, my name's Laitie. I love to read. I love to write. And I just recently published my Heart Like a Bird.
You've been writing for about a decade and a half, which was since you were in middle school. What have you learned about writing since you were in middle school? And this might take you a while to answer this question.
I've learned so much about writing. I've learned how to keep going, how to keep improving, up like from the beginnings of that to the even more in-depth lessons, like just I'm sorry, I lost track.
It's okay. That happens to me all the time.
Okay. I had it in my head, and then to even the deeper lessons, like how to accept when your writing isn't as perfect, but you got to just keep working to improve it. And at some point, you got to publish it.
Without spoiling too much of your book, Like a Bird, what is that book about?
It's mostly about a runaway slave who, Infernal, it's a fantasy backdrop. And the slave goes to live in the human realm because they're an infernal, and the humans don't really get along with him very well. They don't like him, and he's just trying to exist.
How long did it take you to write Like a Bird?
That was about 8 years, I want to say. And most of my other stories are older than that.
Okay. Is there any real life lessons that can be learned from Like a Bird, even though it's a fantasy novel?
Absolutely. It's very much a lesson in loving and accepting people as they are, whether they're whoever they are, whatever their background. It's about not judging a book by its cover.
Is Like a Bird self-published, traditionally published, or published by a hybrid press?
It's self-published on Amazon at the moment.
Tell us more about the poetry you write and your style of poetry writing.
My style for poetry writing is more emotion than anything else. There's a pattern to it, but it's a kind of loose pattern. There's a cadence, but there's no rhyming. And it's sometimes it can get pretty abstract, but it's also very, very deep and emotional.
Are you writing nonfiction? And if so, what topics are you currently writing nonfiction about?
I am working on a nonfiction book it's got a funny name. It's a long story, but it's called Ooh Woo Boo Boo and Other Things That Have Kept Me Around. It's basically my spiritual beliefs in the format of, hey, thinking this way might actually help you get through your tough time. Try to pick something. I put all my beliefs in there, and if you pick just one tiny thing to agree with that helps improve your life, that's the goal there.
Is there an interesting backstory to the name of your upcoming nonfiction book?
Yes, there is. It's I have a hard time remembering it actually, but the main point of it was I was sitting with my husband and we were talking about what to call it, and he poked me or something, and I made the noise ooh woo, and he was like, "That's the name of your book, Ooh Woo Boo Boo. There you go." And I thought it was great.
What drives you to write fiction, nonfiction, and poetry?
A lot of it's a couple of different factors. I have ADHD, so my interest wavers a lot, and I love to be challenged. It's also I also change favorite topics a lot. Like and I think this is potentially autism coming into it, where I find a special interest, I find an obsession, and I stick with it for a while. Then ADHD is like, yeah, okay, here's another one. So that plays a role, but also writing is my thing. It's how I process and comprehend the world around me, and it's how I express myself best as well.
Did you participate in National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo for short, last November, or did you just participate in the preceding Camp NaNoWriMo last year?
Last year, I think I tried to do NaNoWriMo, but I very quickly gave up because it was very overwhelming in my life. I'm still going through a rough patch. We were going through a rough patch, and I just couldn't have the energy for it. I have also done camps, but I think it's been a year or so since I've actually done a Camp Nano.
Do you believe that NaNoWriMo is for uh, every author, or is it just for authors with a certain type of skill set?
Oh, it's absolutely for any writer, anyone who wants to do it, that's for you. It's great for, I mean, even if you take it beyond your writing into productivity, the kind of mindset that NaNoWriMo tries to give, especially writers, but anybody, it's good for anybody and everybody, whoever wants to do it.
Your blog is called Broken Crayon Coloring. Why did you choose that name for your blog, and what types of blog posts do you write?
So I chose Broken Crayon Coloring because a lot of my life is about being broken but still being good, or perhaps maybe that's why you're good. I also read tarot, kintsugi, the art of um of mending pottery with gold. Um, a lot of that is about how we're all broken. We've all been through hell and back. That doesn't make us any less. In fact, it might even make us more. We can still color broken crayon coloring. You can still color. And we're beautiful because of it with the kintsugi.
You mentioned earlier in the interview that you have ADHD. How does the ADHD both help and hinder you as an author?
It helps because, for one thing, I don't annoy everybody else in the world with the same obsession over and over again. Um, it and being ADHD and autistic, it helps me get not diagnosed autistic. I think I'm autistic. Um, gets me really deep into whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm obsessing about. So I learn a lot, which I love to learn, and I create beautiful things. I wrote this book between 8 years of obsessions. And I think it's just beautiful. It helps me think about things maybe when I shouldn't be thinking about them, but other times when it's just dull, I have something to entertain me to think about so that I can make my story better.
Yeah, I'm going to note here that I have an autism spectrum disorder myself. It was called Asperger's syndrome when I was diagnosed when I was a kid, but that name has been dropped from official diagnoses because Asperger was Hans Asperger, who was a Nazi child butcher.
Yes.
And that's not exactly a person you want to name a medical condition after.
Right.
And I noticed a lot of your writing habits are a lot like mine.
Oh, wow.
So that is it's quite interesting to interview. But I do have one final question. Now, I do not have diabetes, but in one of your blog posts, you noted that you have diabetes. How much of a challenge is it for you to manage your diabetes?
Oh, it's a huge challenge. I am still trying to fight going on to insulin because it's so uncontrolled. And not only is the sugar itself hard to control, the cravings are hard to control. Um, just changing that lifestyle the right way, it's extremely difficult.
Laitie, you were an amazing guest. for this podcast, I thank you for appearing on Apollo Papyrus.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here. I appreciate you all.
Laitie is an amazing author, and it was wonderful to interview her. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write and read your passion. Bye for now. Remember to subscribe to the Apollo Papyrus YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/@ApolloPapyrus and the Apollo Papyrus Substack newsletter at apollopapyrus.substack.com. Y'all can visit the Apollo Papyrus website at campaaronapollo.wixsite.com/Apollo Papyrus and follow Apollo Papyrus on Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr at Apollo Papyrus. Copyright 2024, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.